Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
I'm probably not going to continue recording this way because I'm currently standing up and that feels disastrous. Feels like I will be too quick to meander around to move about.
We're in a weird spot right now because don't have we have all our furniture picked out, so we don't have our podcast studio ready. So you are in a weird situation in the guest room right now.
Standing in the corner of the guest room with my stuff on a bunch of boxes. I'm in the corner of the guest room recording. Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show, your twice weekly pop culture podcast where we talk about movies, TV, music, and more. And as always, these are old movies, so this is a spoiler show. You'll be fine.
You barely get a warning.
Yeah, you'll be fine. We're doing you a favor. I say that too frequently on this show. You should be thanking us.
Yeah, you should really be thanking us for making this thing that's just fun for us mostly.
We're trying to find a way to get chumps to pay us to watch our favorite movies.
If you are a chump.
And on that note, do you want to hawk our Patreon?
Yeah, sure. We have a Patreon. It is in progress right now. We are going to be making some changes, but feel free to pledge. You can search for us on the Patreon website, or you can link out from our website, soimwatching.com. And if you feel like supporting, you can. Any little bit helps. You can pick a tier, or you can just donate to your heart's content.
Go for the chump tier.
We have to make one now.
We have to make one.
It just has to be the chump tier.
Isn't it just like patreon.com/soimwatching?
I think so, but I've never actually committed that to memory. So that's why I always say that it links out from the website too, because soimwatching.com is like way easier.
Yeah. We're 2.5 years into this. Let's sit down and write a script.
I mean, should we? I feel like this is why people like us.
Let us know. Well, so anyways, this timely episode here in mid-August is going to be, I started to say holdover, and that's not how I mean it, but we were on break in the month of June when we got the very sad news that Joel Schumacher passed away at the age of 80 from cancer, which that's gotten a lot of people that I didn't know this year, but famous for several movies: St. Elmo's Fire, Lost Boys. How could I forget The Phantom of the Opera?
All right, you know what? I enjoy The Phantom of the Opera. This is not at all a
continuation from a conversation we were having earlier.
Unbelievable. But
we decided, and this is very common or very particular to people of our age, generation, and persuasion. He is most infamous for his two Batman films, largely regarded as duds, although I think that's more Batman and Robin. As I recall, didn't Batman Forever kind of skate by?
I think people like Batman Forever more.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
We will get into it. I actually fucking cannot wait. The little bit of preface I want to give this is that I have seen both of these movies. Batman Forever, I quite honestly think I only saw once or twice.
Yeah, same.
I think my dad rented it for us when we were kids, 95, so I was 10 years old. And the Batman movies, I thought I was into them, and I definitely wasn't not into them, but I watched them just a hair before I was ready, so they all scared me. And that's why I'm not necessarily fond of the Tim Burton ones, which I am more than prepared to revisit. So I think we're going to do that probably around October.
Yeah.
Especially if you're interested, let us know. But Batman and Robin was one of the first movies that I remember seeing and being like, yes. Like I was like 1997, I think. I was 12. It was the summer. Yeah, I was 12 years old. I couldn't have been more into it.
Yeah.
And it was a favorite of mine for several years. And as the years passed, I started to understand how corny it was. And I definitely became aware of its reputation as being terrible. And for a long time, I fought that. And then frankly, I think it's honestly been 10, if not 12, possibly even 15 years since I've seen it. So we're going to go ahead and watch both of them, revisit them, and let you know what we think about them and their legacies.
How we think they hold up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly certain that I'm going to come at this with the understanding that they are not excellent movies.
They're not good films. They're good movies.
Yeah, I think we'll have stuff to talk about, so.
I think so too.
So, okay, cool. Without further ado, we will dive into Batman Forever.
Yay. I really thought you were going to go straight into Kiss from a Rose, to be honest.
Baby. Yeah, to be honest. No, when we went out of our intro, I started to sing the Batman song, and I was like, I don't know the Batman song. And then it started, and I was like, I fucking know the Batman song.
I definitely know the Batman song.
And then there's like a weird... Yeah. So, okay. Probable change of plans 1/5 into the episode.
Who could have anticipated?
We got maybe 9 minutes into this movie, and I was like, I think it's gonna need to be a 2-part episode.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm glad you're there.
I have less to say about this one than I think I'm gonna have to say about Batman and Robin, but I was like, we could easily talk for an hour about Batman and Robin. Yeah.
I think I'm going to wax poetic about several things here because I was thinking a lot of different things while watching this movie. And one of the things I was thinking that I just find to be an interesting conversation to start off with is you and I, are very fascinated with context, with how things don't just exist in a vacuum.
Right.
And I think that there's something to be said for revisiting movies. Because I think, do you remember that like little quiz I gave you and Will like 2 weeks ago where I was like, we perceive time in 2 different ways. Mm-hmm. Some people perceive time actively and some people perceive time passively.
Okay.
And it's like, I think when a movie comes out, we treat ourselves as the entity that's moving forward in time. So this movie is released to entertain us. Mm-hmm. And I think as we go forward in time and when we look back at movies, we're looking at it as something that exists within time and within culture. And we're seeing how it shaped the world around it and in relation to all of that stuff. And so it's like these movies, I can see how when they came out, they were met with a no, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I think it was a little more emphatic than that, but I agree.
Knowing that about them, knowing their place in the grand scheme of this storied legacy, I think gives them a weird context that when you revisit them, it's a little bit more like a, instead of a,
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
100%. I am 100% there with you. I also will likely bring this up in Batman and Robin as well, but like Batman, I'm going to make some enemies.
Oh, okay.
Batman is boring as a character. I don't care about Batman. I don't love any of the DC comic heroes. I like Wonder Woman, but I'm not like a huge fan. I think Superman is too good. And I think Batman is like boring man pain, the comic book character. But there is something about these. I also like the Michael Keaton ones, but there's something specifically about these two Joel Schumacher ones that are, to me, transcendent in a way that I don't know that I can fully vocalize. This is what I want for comic book movies to be. I love the MCU. I have liked some of the DC movies that have come out in the last 10 years. I'm not trying to drag those accomplishments down.
Yeah, but think about, for instance, something like Black Panther that went whole hog on its thing, and it was overwhelmingly received.
So good. And that's what I love so much about these two, and to a slightly lesser extent, the Tim Burton ones, because they're also very campy. They feel correct. They are over-the-top villains with no backstory, no real reasoning for their actions to speak of. It is exactly what I want out of comic book movies.
I think we should put a pin in the two Tim Burton ones because we have effectively decided that we're going to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
And before we move on from that, I will say that as I recall, the two Tim Burton ones did focus more on giving the villains backstories.
A little, yes.
It focused more on the villains. And that was always the thing. It's like there's been a general consensus that DC had the good villains and Marvel had the good heroes.
Sure. And I accept that. But like, even like I said about Superman being like too good, you compare that to the like quote unquote very best guy in Marvel, who's Steve Rogers. And there's just so much more depth to Captain America than there is to Superman. And it's like, there just is not. And again, I don't know. I cannot explain to anybody how much
you're going at it from the movie. You're not a comic book person.
I am not a comic book person, so it's the movies only for me. But it's like
pop culture for you.
Yeah, this is what I am. This is what I'm going to gravitate towards when I want to watch a superhero thing. Is this type of thing? It's so over the top. It's nothing but like film noir innuendo with Dr. Chase Meridian and Bruce Wayne, and it's just like it's
more like Brood Wayne.
It's so silly. So silly.
This falls into a category with me where some of my favorite movies are, I have several different categories of favorite movie. I have what I think are the most technically well-made movies. I have what do I have the most enjoyment watching. I have a category that's like movies that I don't necessarily like to sit down and watch. I either find them laborious or I think that they're flawed in a way or whatever. But I think their mere existence is fascinating in a thrilling way. And these fall a little bit more into that category where it's like, there's a point in the middle of this movie where I am actively bored.
Sure.
But
there's a point like that in a lot of movies.
But these two, and this movie in particular, has such an identity. It's an identity that really harkens back to both the Art Deco and the 60s, the campy Batman live action TV show, and the way the comics are. This is a genre that I would call neon noir. Like,
sure, I would co-sign that genre.
It's so funny. The first scene of this movie, it was hysterical to me. There was a point where I leaned over to you and I was like, look at my face. And I had like a shit-eating grin. Just the way that he comes in and him and Chase's introduction. I love that when he meets her, he's like, he negs the shit out of her. He's like, naive, but insightful.
And she's like, ooh.
Step 2, insult your princess. Insult her face, her body, her brain, her car. The lower her self-esteem, the higher your chances, bro. It's been biologically proven by me.
It's so hilarious. And there's such, just so immediately, so many layers of artifice that I don't know how anyone ever took it at its word.
That is, I think, at its heart, my biggest argument for these movies is that they are literally the comic pages brought to life in a way that, like, while I agree they are better films, the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy is so dour, and it's such a like.
Well, and those are so much more character based.
It's very character based, and it's much more tightly plotted. There's things that actually make narrative sense.
And it's
I
sophisticated,
understand.
yeah,
Sophisticated for sure. I understand, but like Batman Forever is so much more fun than any of the Dark Knight trilogy.
I think if they came out at a later time, they could have been better received. However, they were sort of the sacrificial lamb. It's like they couldn't exist without them existing first. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, like if Sin City was the first thing to came out, or even this harkens back to Dick Tracy. I mean, I know you never finished the whole movie, but this felt like a much more efficient Dick Tracy in many places.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're playing pretend. There is so much where the actors, the good actors anyways, Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones, to a lesser extent Chris O'Donnell and Nicole Kidman, but they're really leaning into the hammy aspects of it. Like, this is Nicole Kidman, not in her prime. She's beautiful, and it is nice to see her so young and beautiful. However, I prefer my Nicole Kidman at a good, like, 45, 40, you know? Like, could you see Satine in here?
Well, I could a little. And that was one of similarly to what you were just saying, that was what I was going to say, is that because of the layers of artifice and everything that you were talking about, and the good actors specifically, but that's why I compare it to a noir movie, because her character in a noir movie would be flat. There would be nothing really behind there. There's no subtext. It's all text. And like Tommy Lee Jones is kind of like a James Cagney type of person, and Jim Carrey is kind of like a Peter Lorre type of person, and there's all of these tropes that are going into it, and it almost feels like a movie from the Hays Code, where they are saying things, but they're not saying exactly what they want to say, but they're saying it in a way that it makes you get the point of what they're trying to say. I honestly, it feels inspired. And it's like it's hard to do that when you don't have to do it, and they didn't have to do that.
They didn't have to go this hard.
They didn't have to go that hard, and it's inspired, and I think it's honestly brilliant.
There's a way to watch this movie where everyone, with the exception of Bruce Wayne, is gay.
Sure. 100%.
And it makes it so much better, because what on earth Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey are doing in this movie, I will never know. I will know, because we don't witness the birth of Two-Face. I guess just because I saw The Dark Knight, I thought we knew Harvey Dent before, and we don't.
We don't. And that's honestly, I know we don't want to get into the Dark Knight trilogy like a ton, but that was for real my biggest gripe with The Dark Knight. Is then we literally never saw Aaron Eckhart again. And I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. I was so mad.
Okay, so it's the scene when Jim Carrey comes into Two-Face's lair. And I just kind of looked at you and I was like, are you getting a and now kiss vibe?
Yeah.
Like, never in my wildest dreams would I have been like, I need to see, Jim Carrey blow Tommy Lee Jones. But within seconds of the scene, I was like, I would like to see it. And they just have that dynamic kind of through the entire movie.
Yeah.
And it also harkens back to, because you mentioned the Hays Code. And remember how, like, the depiction of LGBT characters has a very, like, storied and troubled history in movies. And one of the ways they dealt with allowing gay characters was to code them villainous, like queer coding and stuff.
Yep.
And so there's something about it that it's borderline Disney villain-esque, the amount of glee they're putting into it.
Oh, yeah.
Because even Sugar and Spice, and believe me, we could do a whole episode, like probably 32 minutes on
just
Sugar and Spice
on
alone.
1995 Drew Barrymore and Debbie Mazar? Yeah, I think so too.
Shit. Holy fucking shit. And their styling, the wigs, the costumes, with plural.
Yeah, they both have like 4 good costumes.
Yeah. And they're like, Debbie Mazar is in full like Terry Mugler. Like, I don't think it really is, but that's what it looks like.
It does look like that.
It's just so inspired that it's like, it's such a little gay boy dream. And I love a henchwoman. That's another reason why I want you to watch Wild Wild West so bad, is we get 4 of them in that.
Okay.
One of whom is Musetta Vander.
Nice.
There's something about it that just feels so deliciously campy Adam West Batman.
Mm-hmm. But even campier somehow.
Because Jim Carrey, he's doing quintessential Jim Carrey, but somehow it doesn't, like, it feels a part of this movie and it feels like this character. Like, it's so similar to what he does in so many other movies, but there's a part of me where it's like the Riddler is the Riddler is the Riddler. And it's just, I liked it so much more than I remember and ever thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, this one is darker than Batman and Robin.
That is true.
It caught me off guard in little ways. There would just be 1 or 2 little things where I'd be like, this is why I didn't like this movie when I was 10. And we even talked about with, I forgot what they're called, Robin's family.
The Graysons.
Yeah, the scene where they all die. It seared into my memory from being 10 years old. And both of us, when the scene came, we kind of were like, oh, I remember that being harder.
I like laughed and you looked at me like I was evil. And I was like, I just remember it being so much more intense than that. It's like, you don't even see them fall. You don't hear a noise. You just like, you see them start to fall. And then you cut to Robin looking through the like skylight. And then you cut back and they're all just like splayed on the ground.
I remember the cut to them just on the ground. That's what really stuck with me. Even just the use of the circus, because they talk about in the whole first act this charity circus.
Yeah.
And I finally was like, that's not a thing.
That's not real.
It's like when in Will and Grace, when Grace keeps trying to have the good old fashioned piano party. And he was like, you can keep saying that, but it doesn't make it a thing. Do you remember that one?
I don't know that I ever made it that far.
She buys this piano to have good old fashioned piano parties. And he was like, you can't just put good old fashioned in front of things.
Do you just mean like a saloon? Like,
I don't know. But yeah. And so they just kept calling it that. And I mean, just the mere presence of a circus is sinister.
Well, it is now.
I think it's always been.
I don't know. You don't like circuses, but I used to like circuses.
I was more of an Ice Capades kind of girl, but
I think the Ice Capades are kind of creepy.
And I love Gossip Gertie, which I found out her name was Jennifer something Sanderson or something. Mm-hmm. She is the actual legitimate wife of one of the creators, of one of the comic book writers.
Oh, fun.
And she's in both of them. If they were even 1 iota more afraid of the premise, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But the whole hogness of it is because this was also giving me like Wicked Repo vibes and stuff. Like just this kind of like there's just this grotesquerie to so much of it. And also you gotta, and this is true of Batman and Robin as well, will be a little redundant in certain parts, but you gotta love a setting like a Gotham City that has an actual identity.
Yes, please God, let's talk about this, because that's another thing that I despise about every other Batman, like every other segment of time that Batman exists in.
It's just Pittsburgh, you know?
Or like Chicago, like the south side of Chicago. And I'm just like, I want this. I want those big stone men.
Giant statues.
Huge stone men. I want it to look like a set. I want it to look like you built it in the Warner Brothers backlot, and I don't want this gritty realism in like the Narrows or whatever the fuck it's called.
But it's like the library at Alexandria meets Blade Runner.
Yeah,
and like,
it's incredible. It's one of my favorite aesthetics for like a city. It's just so cool. And I don't know, I do like when people shoot movies in real places. Obviously, tons of my favorite movies are shot in real places, but there is something so quaint and so old-fashioned that whenever I can tell something is shot on a backlot, I just am like, oh, this is cozy. I just feel cozy.
But this also has scope and scale, which I think is an accomplishment, to have something feel cozy, but also big.
Yeah.
And even Chase Meridian's room, it's so odd. Like it's like she's in like a Babylonian temple at one point.
Or like Cinderella's attic or something.
Yeah, there's weird paintings on the wall. Like it's like a cheesecake factory. And it's just like
it is just like covered in frescoes. Like
none of this is even remotely. Why is there wicker? You know, but I don't remember if it's in Batman and Robin, but there were several scenes in this, especially with her because of that wig, where there's like wind in her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels so necessary and welcome. It just like, to mention Sin City again, it really feels like a precursor to that. And I think audiences just weren't ready for it, or we weren't there.
I think we weren't there. I think what has happened is people really liked the Tim Burton ones, and then he didn't come back to do this one. And these were so...
Tim Burton produced this one.
He did produce it.
Hence the darkness.
But I do think that people were so put off by this because it was so different from the previous ones. And so then I think when the Nolan movies came around, it was such an overcorrection. And I mean, again, they're excellent. But I think now we're finally getting to a point where like something that's coming up or perhaps has just passed, depending on when we actually release this episode, something like The Boys is like a perfect mix where it's dark and it's colorful and it's funny and it's serious and it's like all of the things at the same time. I think we had to go through these two gauntlets to get to where we are now. Like we had to go to each extreme to wind up somewhere in the middle.
The other elephant in the room, which I mean is why we're doing this, the whole Joel Schumacher-ness of it.
Are you going to talk about the queerness of these movies?
Yes,
because it is so remarkable, the like level and intensity and like just depth of the queerness in both these movies. It like blows my mind.
And so completely, I don't know that oblivious is the word, but without apology.
Yes, yeah. It's not oblivious.
Like,
I know what you mean.
Shame,
yeah.
like totally and utterly unabashedly. You know, we made the joke because you were talking about how gay everything was, and I was like, the ambiguously gay duo.
Right.
Like,
but it's like not even just Two-Face and the Riddler. It's like, you know, everything down to like the way that Val Kilmer's hair is cut, the way he wears turtlenecks sometimes, everything that Dr. Chase Meridian wears and the way that her hair happens. And it's just like literally everything about it.
Her tits in that first scene when she's on the roof.
Unbelievable.
That's where I wrote down Dick Tracy. Like that was some breathless Mahoney if ever I've
Absolutely.
seen. And Chris O'Donnell's entire thing in this movie.
All of it.
He invented trade. It didn't exist before this.
Well,
as a concept.
That was the thing that we were talking about where I was like, is he supposed to be a minor? Because he was talking about having to like ditch out of like social services stuff.
Yeah. And then later they mentioned him in college class. So I think it's supposed to be like on the cusp.
So like 17.
Uh-huh.
That's fair. 17 is fair. Chris O'Donnell, though, was 25 when this movie came out.
With his fucking diamond earring.
Yep. Well, it's a very traveling circus type of thing.
It's just so knowing, though. Like when people will look back at Rebel Without a Cause and it's like, oh, there's gay subtext here. And it's like, this is like, no, that's the point of why we're doing this. Like,
yeah, and that's I think the thing that's so fun about this movie is that it is very similar to Showgirls in that way where it's like, it's very fun interpreting the subtext until you realize there isn't any. Like Chris O'Donnell's, it just is all there.
Chris O'Donnell's ass is like sixth build. Like,
yeah.
Like him in the jeans and the like cut off shirt doing the laundry. Like, what was the point of it? Because you were so focused on the fact that Bruce Wayne's washing machine didn't work.
Bruce Wayne's washing machine does not have an adequate spin cycle because Robin was like twirling all that laundry around and there was like water coming out like it was raining inside.
Meanwhile, I can't believe that he wasn't like trying to whip Alfred, you know, like
trying to get Alfred to play in his reindeer games.
Yeah, to play. I was trying to quote this, the Family Guy joke, the pole fancy and penis butt and legs a spread.
Tell me about when you were young, Grandpa.
Oh, Sonny, those were crazy times. My friends and I were out of control. We used to give each other wet willies and funny arms. We'd play dandy balls and legs a spread and penis butt.
Sounds kind of gay, Grandpa.
It was gay, everyone was. But back then we were called pole fancies. It was real good old-fashioned grab the nearest tree and hold on for dear life gay. Not today's fancy featherbed thread count gay. People got hurt back then.
That's gay.
Yeah, it was pretty gay.
That sounds kind of gay, Grandpa. It was gay.
It was gay.
And not today's, I feel like what he says, he's like, not today's, like, marching in parades or whatever. He was like, real good old-fashioned gay. Like, hold on to the nearest tree for dear life gay. People got hurt back then. It's one of my favorite things ever.
It's very funny.
And that is it. This movie sort of in an encapsulation. And they think there's a plot with Batman brooding and like trying to understand what, like, who he is and why he's doing this, because I guess he repressed the memories, which is hilarious to genuinely think about, because it means he's running around cosplaying as a bat and like doesn't know
And
that
he
he's
doesn't
doing
remember
that.
why.
Yeah, he's like, I know I've got bat ears on, but I can't remember why I settled on this.
So here's my thing with that. I think that the visual of it's Thomas, right? His father's name, Thomas and Martha.
Sure, it's
I
Martha
think-
that we know.
That we know.
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
I do think that the visuals of their murder are very striking. The pearls and the roses and the opera clothes and everything, blah, 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 whatever. I swear to everything that is holy.
All the saints in Christendom.
If I see that shit, one single loose pearl, one more time in a movie in my life, I'm going to kill someone at Warner Brothers.
See, I'm past that. I'm at the place where if they don't do it, I'll riot.
Now
Because
you're
it's
like, no, you have to. You
why
made your
now?
bed.
Yeah, like, what? Oh, suddenly you understand restraint? Like,
Okay, maybe I will try to reach that place as
You'll
well.
amend.
That seems like a better place to be.
and I'll go ahead and agree that Val Kilmer is not a very good Batman. I think he's the most attractive, so that's what was making my
That's
decision.
true. I always forget that you don't find George Clooney good looking.
I mean, he's okay.
I think he's one of the most handsome men that's ever
I think
lived.
he's objectively handsome. It just doesn't really do anything for me. I'm like, yeah,
It
it's
does it
fine.
for me. He is my preferred Batman until we
Oh,
see the
God.
Robert Pattinson, and then we'll see.
I could like go to bed on Val Kilmer's lips.
I mean, that's fair. Val Kilmer is a very attractive man too, especially in 1995.
One thing about this movie was the entire movie dubbed.
So a lot of it seemed like yes.
Why?
I have
was
no
it
idea.
Stylistic? Because it almost worked. I almost liked it. That fucking bank guard in the beginning. Holy shit.
No.
Whoa! It's boiling acid!
Oh no! It's boiling acid!
And like, holy cow! I was like, dude.
There was another
he was
guy later.
narrating every single thing that was happening.
He
to
really was.
them.
There was another guy later who was like, something was happening. I think it was maybe it was at the circus, or the thing after that, but he was finally Batman like swung in or whatever. And he was like, Batman, yeah.
It was. I remember.
And I was like,
Again,
yikes.
Again, it's hilarious. Like,
Yeah, 100%.
and I can see it being 1995 or God forbid 1997, and you're like a comic book guy the way that the Simpsons comic book guy is, and you go to see your Batman movie or whatever, and you're like, what the fuck is this shit? I can I totally get it. I totally get it. I'm just saying you're wrong, and history will remember you.
Look,
that
all
way.
I'm saying is, yes, The Dark Knight deserved its Oscars, but Batman Forever deserved one too. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
No, I think it's so good. I think it's so necessary. I think the world is a better place for having done. You couldn't have been more spot on when you mentioned Showgirls, which we mention frequently. It's one of our favorites, but it's one of those things where it was like, it was a dismal failure in the precise moment it was released, but in time it has become irremovably woven into the fabric of culture. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's just like, there's just no other way. There's no other way around it. There's no other way about it. We didn't really talk about the plot. It's an exceptionally stupid plot, I think.
It's not my favorite.
Well, because it's like Jim Carrey is trying to TV people to death, but he's like trying to take their brain.
Well, he's like sucking all of their information into his brain so that he can, like, I would imagine, manipulate everybody with the information that he has.
Okay.
Because that's why he's trying to get into Bruce's mind.
Because that's the other thing is it's like the whole him and Two-Face thing. It's like he takes over real quick with Two-Face. Like Two-Face bowels, I was going to say bends over, but I'll go with it. Two-Face bends over pretty quickly. And again, bold that we don't, like, we get next to no concept of who Two-Face is. We see, like, part of a courtroom scene on TV where someone threw acid on him in the courtroom. I don't know. It was very strange. And I'm not saying I disliked it. I just think it's odd.
I agree with you. But that is part of the charm of these movies is, like, even the Riddler has very limited, like, reason for doing any of this stuff. It's like Bruce was like, you can't do this really highly dangerous and not at all tested thing on the citizens of Gotham. And he was like, now I'm going to do it harder.
And it goes to some places. For starters, I literally wrote, I could care less about this climax. Like the climax was so completely losing me until we actually get to the scene where Jim Carrey is like full blown Vegas showgirl. And
okay. Apparently, he had, like, a lot of input on his costumes, which I love to pieces, because I just think I'm very like Marge Simpson, like holding up the potato or whatever. And I just think neat. Jim Carrey's neat. Like, I just think he's neat. I like him so much. He's so appealing to me. I find him absurdly attractive, even though he's such a, like, goofball.
I agree.
It's just even neater that he, like, helped design these costumes because they are so fantastic.
But it's like the movie, it almost touches the face of God at the end because he, like, does this thing, and I didn't write down what he said, but he says a sentence. And the last sentence of his voice sounds like War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Soon my little box will be on countless TVs around the world, feeding me credit card numbers, bank codes, sexual fantasies, and little white lies. Into my head they'll go. Victory is inevitable. For if knowledge is power, then a god am. Was that over the top? I can never tell.
And you're like, what's happening? And it's like he almost turns into like a god or something, like Ozymandias or something.
Well, I think kind of yes, because he's at that point absorbed so many people's minds. Yeah.
Like I almost expect him to get giant. And then after Batman like knocks down the like crystal cone and the laser and and everything, when they go back and show him, he's like physically distorted in this really disturbing way.
You know what it reminded me of is like the first time that you see Amber Tamblyn in the ring after the girl gets her. It's like that.
It's so where it's like almost I can't believe I'm saying this, but I almost wish there was more. Like I almost wish the movie went harder. But the last thing I did want to say, just circle back to how fucking hot Drew Barrymore and Debbie Mazar were. And this was Drew Barrymore's first big gig post all of her like troubles.
Oh, okay. Like post rehab and everything.
Yeah, post all that. This was the first thing that she did, and it was kind of like one of those like we'll give you a test or something.
Sort of like a Robert Downey Jr., but you have to pay for your own insurance type of thing.
Precisely. And she nailed it. She knew exactly who she was. I mean, I personally could use one more scene with them, but they are at the very least in the bottom or in the bottom at the end. Yeah.
They're also like relatively, Drew Barrymore especially, but they're both relatively high in the credits.
And then it was this that got her on Scream, on their list of Scream.
Okay.
So. Oh, actually, one last thing I do want to say is, I don't think I've mentioned this. I mentioned it to you and Will personally, But at Comic-Con last year, at the 2019 Comic-Con, Hot Toys unveiled 2 dolls of Robin and Batman and Val Kilmer in their suits at the end, and they were so good. Everybody immediately was making fun of them as like, oh my God, who would ever buy these? And I was like, yeah, I was like, first of all, again, even people who don't like this movie, you cannot claim it's not iconic.
No, it's super iconic.
Like, you seriously think I'm not gonna buy the like fucking rubber PVC nippled batsuit dolls, and like the Robin codpiece is so exaggerated in this movie. It's ridiculous. It's like, he's, like I said, he's like trade. He's not, this isn't daddy. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
for sure. Look, here's the thing. All we're going to say is that if they ever make a Poison Ivy doll, it is over for you hoes.
Over.
You're
and
never
Mr.
going to hear
Freeze.
about anything else.
And Mr. Freeze. I'm not afraid to say it.
No, Mr. Freeze
I would
too.
buy
Honestly,
the shit out of that doll.
Here would be my ideal is Mr. Freeze with the tube that his wife is in.
I could make that.
Incredible. Incredible.
The Poison Ivy, I hope it is, if they ever do it, is controversially not the glittery bustier.
Is it the pink and orange?
No, the lime green jumpsuit. With
yes.
the
Okay.
red fingertip gloves and the 2 cones in her hair.
Yep, that's a good one.
That's the one I would want them to do. So
only if she comes with a small and big bane.
you're going too far with this.
I need it.
So, okay.
Okay, well, we have gone quite a long time on Batman Forever, so as you can imagine, we will be doing a separate episode on Batman and Robin at some point in the near future. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching, Instagram @SoI'mWatchingThisShow. We also have a website, soimwatching.com, which links out to everything, including our Patreon, which we are currently in the process of revamping, but you can go check that out and see if you'd like to join. And then other than that, you can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. And that's it for us.
Da, 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 da.
There is so much a man can tell me, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain, baby. To me, you're like a grown addiction that I can't deny. Won't you tell me, is that healthy, baby? But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become large and the light that you shine can't be seen?